Hi. Did you know that the author of the Three Musketeers was a black man? His name was Alexandre Dumas. He was the son of a mulatto. Now, he was born into under very poor conditions, in very bad poverty. Around 1802, they said that he had tremendous strength and was a deadly marksman who won 20 duels. Now, Dumas, when he was very young, in his teens, got smitten by the literary bug when he went to see Hamlet, the play by Shakespeare. And he loved it so much that he memorized the entire play. That's how good he was. He had a photographic memory. But his intelligence, like the intelligence of many geniuses, was very, very lopsided. They say he was terrible at multiplication. Never in math, he never got past the multiplication tables. Didn't even have them completely memorized. And they say his mother wanted him to be a musician at one time, tried to give him violin lessons, but even after 2 years, he was so bad that he couldn't even tune his own violin. But as far as writing went, oh, he was up there. He used to devour everything that he could get his hands on. He was one of these compulsive readers, but he especially loved the histories and the mythologies. Now, as I say, the play Hamlet inspired him so much, grabbed him so much, that he decided to write a play of his own, which he called Henry III. And he managed to get it produced at the Théâtre Français, and it became an instant success, and so did he. In fact, he was such a success at 26 that he decided he needed his own theater. So he set up his own theater, and he packed it every night with his shows. Now, when the revolution of 1848 in France came about, it killed the theater business, and he found himself broke, and he had to flee to Brussels, Belgium. That was when he decided that he'd try his hand at novels, and that was when he produced books like the Three Musketeers, the Man in the Iron Mask, and the Count of Monte Cristo. Now, I got to tell you something about the way Dumas wrote. He didn't do it all by himself. You see, he was to literature what Henry Ford was to industry. He invented the assembly line, believe it or not. Let's say that he wanted to write a novel that had 12 chapters. He'd hire 12 writers, and he'd tell each one what the flow of action was in each chapter, and each one would write a chapter, and at the end of the day, he'd have a novel. Now, you could say, well, that didn't make him much of a writer, but that's not true. He could write. In fact, he once bet one of his friends that he could write a complete novel in 72 hours, and that included time for sleep and eating. And his friend took him up on it. He won the bet with 6 hours to spare. Now, the fact that he was black, you might want to wonder if that caused him any problems in life. Yeah, yes, it did. In fact, one of the great literary giants of that age, Honoré de Balzac, would only refer to him as the Negro. But as Alexander Dumas himself said, and I'll quote, "When I discovered that I was black, I determined to act so that men should see beneath my skin." Now, he was very opposed to slavery, and he once wrote a letter to the Bishop of Autun thanking him for his fight against slavery. And I quote again, he said to the bishop, "There may even be relatives of mine who even now are forming part of the cargoes of slave vessels." Okay, now Alexandre Dumas made such an impression on so many people in his day that he attracted quite a few friends who were famous in their own right. And I'm going to list a couple of them, read them to you. Excuse me. One of them was Goethe, the great German poet. Then there was Pope Gregory the 16th, Delacroix, the great French painter, Chateaubriand, the great French poet, Heinrich Heine, another great German poet, and Victor Hugo. He was the novelist who wrote Les Miserables. Now, Victor Hugo did not like Alexandre Dumas at first, but later on, the more he learned about Alexandre Dumas, the more impressed he became, until he finally wrote this about Victor Hugo. I'm sorry, about Alexandre Dumas. I love you more every day, not alone because you are one of the brilliant lights of my century, but because you are one of its consolations. Now, Alexandre Dumas died in 1870 at the age of 68. The great poet Heinrich Heine wrote of him, on Heinrich Heine's deathbed, he had Dumas novels read to him and wrote Dumas, your first name and your last name are currency worth more than gold and silver. Now, a journalist of during that era wrote of Alexandre Dumas, the two Americans sent fleets of packet boats to fetch his novels. His dramas were played in Egypt to delight the old age of Muhammad Ali. His writings have been read in Chernandagor and Tobolsk. He has had hundreds of theatrical pieces performed and published in thousands of volumes. He became a soldier in order to take part in street fights. He commanded a legion, has taken part in 20 duels, fought as many lawsuits, chartered ships, and distributed pensions from his private purse. He has danced, hunted, loved, fished, hypnotized, cooked, and made 10 millions, spent much more.